I'm Charlie Saunier from the Renegades of Puck, and this is the 20th Century Hockey Chronicle. 1 year after limiting draft eligibility to 20-year-olds or older, the NHL adopts rules making players all over the world eligible for the NHL draft. The Hockey Hall of Fame inducts 3 members: Bill Cowley, James Dunn, and Jim Hendy. The defending champion Canadiens replaced Toe Blake behind the bench with 30-year-old Claude Ruel. The Rangers hire former scoring ace Bernie Jeffrey on as coach, but Boom Boom lasts just 43 games with a record of 22-18-3 before ulcers cause his resignation. On October 16th, Toronto rookie defenseman Jim Dory sets an NHL record with 9 penalties, 4 minors, 2 majors, 2 10-minute misconducts, and 1 game misconduct, totaling 48 penalty minutes. On November 7, 1968, St. Louis center Red Berenson scores 6 goals at Philadelphia as the Blues win 8-0. He's the only NHL player ever to score 6 in a game on the road. On February 16, 1969, Alex Del Vecchio notches his 1,000th point. The Canadiens, 46-19-11, win the East Division by 3 points over Boston, as Jan Conyer leads them in goals with 43 and points with 87. The Bruins' Phil Esposito totals 126 points, shattering the NHL record of 97. Boston sets records for most goals, 303, and penalty minutes, 1,297, as they form their reputation as the Big Bad Bruins. The Rangers, fueled by the goal-a-game line of Jean Rattel, 78 points, Rod Gilbert, 77 points, and Vic Hatfield, 66 points, take 3rd place in the East Division. Eddie Jockman, the Rangers' slick goalie, leads the league and wins with 37 for the 2nd straight year. Toronto takes 4th place as Norm Ullman tallies 77 points. The Red Wings finish 5th despite 103 points from 40-year-old Gordie Howe and 49-goal performance of Frank Mahovlich. Bobby Hull scores an NHL record 58 goals, but Chicago finishes last in the East with a 34-33-9 record. In the West Division, St. Louis Blues capture 1st place 37-25-14 as Red Berenson leads the division with 82 points. The 2nd place Seals are led by veteran Ted Hampson with 75 points. The Penguins fail to make the postseason as the offense of Keith McCreary, 25 goals, and Ken Chimkul, 52 points, is not enough. Minnesota goes 3-7-1 with Ren Blair behind the bench, switches to John Muckler, 6-22-7, and then goes back to Blair, 9-14-7. Minnesota's Danny Grant and Oakland's Norm Ferguson, 34 goals each, are second only to Red Berenson's 35 in goals in the West. Frank Mahovlich and Phil Esposito tie for second in goals with 49 apiece. Behind Bobby Hull, Ken Hodge has 45 and Gordie Howe has 44. With 77 assists, Phil Esposito far surpasses Stan Mikita's 67, Gordie Howe's 59, and Alex Del Vecchio's 58. Phil Esposito's 126 points outdistances 2nd place Bobby Hull's 107, 3rd place Gordie Howe's 103. They're the first 3 NHL players to record 100-point seasons. St. Louis' Jacques Plante leads the league with a 1.96 goals against average, while teammate Glenn Hall is runner-up at 2.16. Hall leads the league in shutouts with 8. Flyer Leaf Forbes Kennedy leads the NHL with 219 penalty minutes. Boston's Bobby Orr leads the NHL in plus-minus with a plus 65 rating. In the East Division semifinals, the Canadiens sweep the Rangers and the Bruins broom the Maple Leafs. In the West semis, St. Louis sweeps Philadelphia while Los Angeles goes the limit against Oakland. The Kings win Game 7 on the road 5-3 to advance. The Habs win the first 2 East Finals games against Boston as Ralph Backstrom and Mickey Redmond each score overtime goals. Montreal advances to the finals with a 2-1 victory over the Bruins in Game 6 as Jean Beliveau scores 11:28 of double overtime. The Blues, on the goaltending of Glenn Hall and Jacques Plante, sweep Los Angeles in 4 games, go to the finals against Montreal. The Canadiens take just 4 games to successfully defend the Stanley Cup as they outscore the Blues 12-3. Dick Duff and Bobby Rousseau score in the first 5 minutes of Game 1 to stake the Habs to a 2-0 lead. They cruise to a 3-1 win. In Game 2, Montreal wins 3-1 thanks to goals by Ralph Backstrom, Dick Duff, and Jan Conyer. A pair of goals by Dick Duff as well as the perfect goaltending of Rogie Vachon helps Montreal win Game 3 4-0. Habs tough guy Ted Harris and John Ferguson lead a 3rd period comeback in Game 4 as Harris ties the game and Fergie scores the winner to give Montreal a 2-1 victory and the Stanley Cup. Montreal defenseman Serge Savard wins the Conn Smythe Trophy. The Bruins waste a brilliant 8-goal, 18-point performance by playoff scoring leader Phil Esposito. In postseason awards, Phil Esposito cops the Hart Trophy. The Lady Byng goes to Alex Del Vecchio, his third. The Vezina Trophy is shared by Hall of Fame goalies Jacques Plante and Glenn Hall of St. Louis. Danny Grant of the North Stars and Norm Ferguson of Oakland, both 34 goal scorers, finished 1 and 2 respectively in the Calder Trophy race. Bobby Orr takes his second of 8 straight Norris trophies. Oakland's Ted Hampson wins the Bill Masterton Trophy, while the Lester Patrick Trophy is awarded to Bobby Hull and Edward Jeremiah, a fabled college coach. Denver repeats as NCAA champion, beating Cornell 4-3 in the finals. Denver defenseman Keith Magnuson is named tournament MVP. The Montreal Junior Canadiens capture the Memorial Cup as champions of the Canadian Major Junior Hockey League. On February 16, 1969, Detroit's Alex Del Vecchio became only the third player in NHL history to reach the 1,000-point plateau. He earned the point with an assist, one of 825 in his career, as the Wings trounced Los Angeles before a packed Olympia Stadium in Detroit. Del Vecchio, a longtime lineman of Gordie Howe, finished his 24-year career with 1,281 points and entered the Hall of Fame in 1977. If ever there was a case of a hockey player living by the sword and almost dying by the sword, it occurred during the 1969 preseason. The victim was Ted Green, a Boston Bruins defenseman who, during the 1960s, was among the most fearsome players in the NHL. Green was on the Beantown defense when the Bruins played an exhibition game at Ottawa on September 21, 1969. Normally, such contests were relatively mild, but late in the first period, St. Louis Blues forward Wayne Mackey charged Green behind the Boston net. "I then reached out with my glove hand and shoved Mackey in the face," Green remembered. Mackey fell to the ice but managed to spear Green in the abdomen. Green counterattacked with a stick swipe that caught Mackey below the shoulder. "My last thought was, I guess that'll straighten him out," said Green, and I turned to skate away. But Mackey struck back, clipping Green in the head with his stick. This time, the Bruin hit the ice. He was laying on his side, his head turning violently. "I don't know what had happened, where I had been hit, what I had been hit with, how badly I was hurt," he said. In fact, Green's life was in danger. He suffered a compound skull fracture and a 2.5-hour operation was necessary. There was even a rumor that he had died, said teammate Ed Westfall. At one point, Westfall entered the recovery room at the hospital where Green was on a stretcher-type bed moaning. He was the only patient in a big room and the two nurses kept yelling at Green and jostling him. "I took his hand," Westfall remembered, and said, "Greenie, it's 18. Instead of calling me Ed, the guys call me by my uniform number. Teddy didn't move and I said, 'It's 18, can you hear me? If you can, squeeze my hand.' He squeezed my hand and it felt like a father who had just got the news that a mother and infant are doing fine." Green didn't die, but he did emerge with temporary paralysis. Meanwhile, the Crown charged both players with assault and attempt to injure. Eventually, in separate trials, each was acquitted. NHL President Clarence Campbell suspended both without pay, Green for 13 games and Mackey for 30 days. In Green's case, the suspension was technical because he didn't play all that year, although he did return to the Bruins in 70-71. Without their defensive leader, the Bruins managed an outstanding season, going 40-17-19 and topping the league in goals. Led by the irrepressible Bobby Orr, he won the Art Ross, Hart, and Norris trophies. The Bruins swept Chicago in 4 straight East Finals games and then did the same to St. Louis in the finals. Appropriately, Orr scored the overtime winner in Game 4, giving the Bruins their first Stanley Cup since 1941. As much as the Bostonians missed Green, they demonstrated their core. Orr, Esposito, and goalies Jerry Cheevers and Ed Johnston had the makings of a dynasty. The Hall of Fame inducts 6 members, including Sid Abel, Brian Hextall, Red Kelly, and Roy Waters. Carl Brewer ends 4 years of premature retirement to join the Detroit Red Wings. Terry Sawchuk joins the Rangers for his final season. He'll retire with an all-time NHL goalie records for games played 971, wins 435, and shutouts 103. The NHL receives unwanted notoriety as the result of a preseason stick fight between St. Louis Blues' Wayne Mackey and Boston's Ted Green that leaves Green hospitalized with a fractured skull. Toronto replaces longtime coach Punch Imlach with John McClellan, who steers the Leafs to a last-place finish in the East Division. Using a strong team approach, the Blackhawks win the regular season title with a 45-22-9 record. Chicago's Bobby Hull misses 15 games due to injury but reaches a milestone on February 21st of 1970 as he scores his 500th career goal, becoming the 3rd player to do so. Chicago rookie Tony Esposito, kid brother of Phil Esposito, leads the NHL in wins with 38 and shutouts with 15 while posting a 2.11 goals against average. The Bruins finished with 99 points, tying Chicago, but finished second with 5 fewer wins. Boston's Phil Esposito leads the NHL in goals with 43 for the first time. Bobby Orr leads all NHLers in points with a whopping 120. The Red Wings finish in third place thanks to 42-goal scorer Gary Unger and 38 goals from Frank Mahovlich. The fourth-place Rangers feature the goal-a-game line of John Rattel centering Rod Gilbert and Vic Hadfield, as well as the Bulldog line of Walt Tkachuk between Dave Milan and Billy Fairbairn. The Canadiens, two-time defending champs, matched the Rangers' record 38, 22, and 16, but failed to make the playoffs by virtue of 2 fewer goals, 246 to 244. The Blues win the West on the scoring of Phil Goyette, division-leading 78 points, as well as the goaltending of Ernie Wakely, league-leading 2.11 goals against average. Red Kelly guides the Penguins to a second-place finish in the West. Dean Prentice tops the team in scoring 51 points. Rookie sensation Michael Briere leads with 32 assists. After 32 games, Minnesota GM Ren Blair appoints veteran center Charlie Burns to be the player coach, but Burns' North Stars finish third as just 19, 35, and 22 record in the weak West Division. After 32 games, Minnesota GM Ren Blair appoints veteran center Charlie Burns to be player coach, but Burns' North Stars finish third at just 19, 35, and 22 in the weak West Division. Bill Goldsworthy's 36 goals lead the North Stars, and all West scorers Minnesota's J.P. Parise bagged 72 points to tie Red Berenson for second in the West. Philadelphia falls to fifth place while debuting rookie Bobby Clarke. The Flyers' 17, 35, and 24 set an all-time NHL record for ties. The Flyers boast a burly right wing Gary Dornhofer, whose strategy of camping in the slot enables him to score a team-high 26 goals. In Los Angeles, Hal LaCoy is replaced by Jimmy Wilson after a 5-18-1 start, but the team finishes in the basement with a 14-52-10 record. Goal-scoring leader Phil Esposito finishes ahead of Gary Unger with 42, Stan Mikita with 39, Frank Mahovlich with 38, and Bobby Hull also with 38. Bobby Orr's 87 assists set a new league record. He is followed by Phil Esposito with 56, Minnesota's Tommy Williams with 52, and Walt Tkachuk with 50. With his 120 points, Bobby Orr outshines teammate Phil Esposito with 99, Stan Mikita with 86, Phil Goyette with 78, and Walt Tkachuk with 77. Chicago rookie defenseman Keith Magnuson brawls his way to a league-high 213 penalty minutes. In opening round playoff action, Chicago sweeps Detroit and Boston beats New York 4-2. Pittsburgh knocks off Oakland in 4 quarterfinal games, while St. Louis survives a challenge from Minnesota, winning in 6 games. The Bruins sweep Chicago in the Stanley Cup semifinals, outscoring the Blackhawks 20-10. The Blues and Penn swap home ice wins through 5 games until the Blues break through in Pittsburgh. They win 4-3 to earn their 3rd straight berth in the finals. In Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, the Bruins score 4 third-period goals, and Johnny Busick records a hat-trick as Boston rolls to a 6-1 win. Eddie Westphal, a respected checking forward, scores a pair of first-period goals in Game 2. Boston wins 6-2. Frank St. Marseille opens the scoring for St. Louis in Game 3. Boston answers with a pair. Wayne Cashman then scores twice in third period for a 4-1 final and 3-0 series lead. The desperate Blues take Boston to OT of Game 4, tied 3-3. The Bruins win their first Stanley Cup in 29 years when Bobby Orr scores at 40 seconds of sudden death in Game 4 to beat St. Louis 4-3. Phil Esposito's 27 playoff points set an NHL record, but Bobby Orr, 20 points, is honored with the Conn Smythe Trophy. Besides the Conn Smythe, Bobby Orr wins his first of 3 Hart trophies as well as his 3rd Norris Trophy. The Lady Byng Trophy is presented to Blues center Phil Goyette as Boston's Johnny Busick is runner-up. Tony Esposito, runner-up for the Hart Trophy, wins both the Vezina and Calder trophies. Chicago's Pitt Martin, a 5'9" center, is awarded the Masterton Trophy. Eddie Shore is one of 2 recipients for the Lester Patrick Trophy. James Hendy, longtime owner of the AHL Cleveland Barons, is also honored. Cornell defeats Clarkson 6-4 for the NCAA Championship. Daniel Ladboa, Cornell's outstanding defenseman, is MVP of the tournament. The Montreal Junior Canadiens retain the Memorial Cup as champions of Major Junior Canadian Hockey. The brilliant 21-year career of goaltender Terry Sawchuk was winding down when the New York Rangers acquired him for the 1969-70 season. Sawchuk, the NHL's all-time winningest goalie with 435 victories and shutouts leader with 103, played just 8 games for the Rangers. Troubled and bitter in his later years, Sawchuk died in 1970 after a bad scuffle with teammate Rod Stewart on the lawn of Sawchuk's home. Never in NHL history has a team been as utterly terrifying as the 1970-71 Boston Bruins. The big bad Bruins left opposing goalies in tears as they scored 399 goals, 108 more than any other team. Center Phil Esposito lit the lamp 76 times, breaking the NHL record by 18, and his 152 points smashed his own NHL record by 26. Yet it was defenseman Bobby Orr who skated off with the Hart Trophy. Orr's 37 goals set an NHL record for a backliner, while his 102 assists were the most by anybody ever. Boston's death left other hockey executives gasping. The Bruins boasted the league's top 4 scorers. Johnny Bucyk had 116 points, Ken Hodge had 105, and featured 7 of the league's 10 top scorers. Boston finished at 57-14-7, and were the odds-on favorites for the second straight Stanley Cup, and maybe even 3 more beyond that. Boston was set to meet Montreal in the first round of the playoffs, and nobody gave Montreal a chance. The Habs had missed the playoffs in the 69-70 season, and in December 1970, coach Claude Ruel resigned and was replaced by Al McNeil. The offense, which sputtered the year before, got a boost when GM Sam Pollock obtained Frank Mahovlich from Detroit for Mickey Redmond and 2 others. Still, the club was short in goal. When Pollock elevated netminder Ken Dryden from the American League late in the season, few were impressed. The tall, studious Dryden seemed too inexperienced to be a factor for Montreal. Nevertheless, McNeil made Dryden his goaltender of choice for the home stretch and the opening playoff round. The defending Cup champions weren't too concerned after beating Dryden 3-1 in Game 1 at Boston Garden. In fact, when the Bruins piled up a 5-1 lead in Game 2, they were feeling pretty darn confident, perhaps too confident. Few of us were really up for the playoffs, said Bruins defenseman Ted Green. Our club suffered a letdown after clinching the Prince of Wales trophy. Possibly we were fat cats, and certainly the Canadians were hungry. So hungry that they rebounded in Game 2 for a 7-5 win. That done, the Canadians pushed forward behind Dryden's marvelous goaltending and forced the Bruins to a 7th game at Boston Garden. By now, the Bruins snipers were thoroughly befuddled by Dryden. He seemed all arms and legs, said Green. He turned the Canadians into an inspired team. The inspiration carried through Game 7, which the Habs captured 4-2. There have been few upsets in sports history to match the Canadiens' defeat of Boston. No question, said Green. Dryden was the star. He made fantastic stops. Dryden pursued the miracle through the Stanley Cup Finals, in which Montreal maintained its poise and beat Chicago in 7 games. Ironically, Coach McNeil, who didn't get along with his players, soon resigned under pressure. Dryden, though, would stick around in goal another 7 seasons and lead the Canadiens to 5 more Stanley Cups. The NHL expands from 12 teams to 14 as the Buffalo Sabres and Vancouver Canucks are admitted. Buffalo and Vancouver are placed in the East, while Chicago gets to move to the easy West Division. In a freak accident, goalie great Terry Sawchuk is fatally injured in a fight at his home with Ranger teammate Ron Stewart. Sawchuk dies at the age of 40. With the first pick in the 1970 amateur draft, Buffalo selects Gil Perreault, MVP of the Ontario Hockey Association the previous season. The Hall of Fame inducts 4 new members: Babe Dye, Bill Gadsby, Tom Johnson, and Bob LaBelle. The defending champion Boston Bruins install a new coach, Tom Johnson, as Harry Sinden gives up the bench duties. The Bruins roared a 57-14-7 as they demolished the NHL scoring record with 399 goals. Boston boasts the NHL's top 4 scorers and 7 of the top 10. Boston's Phil Esposito shatters NHL marks for goals with 76 and points with 152, as well as shots on goal, 550. Boston's defenseman Bobby Orr charts new territory in playmaking when he records 102 assists. Johnny Bucyk, 51 goals, 161 points, and Ken Hodge, 43 goals, 62 assists for 105 points, finished 3rd and 4th on the Bruins and in the NHL in scoring. Goaltenders Ed Jockerman and Gilles Villemure lead the Rangers to a second-place finish in the East. The Canadians acquire Frank Mahovlich from Detroit for Mickey Redmond, Bill Collins, and Guy Charron. New coach Al McNeil leads Montreal to a third-place finish. Jean Beliveau leads the team in scoring with 76 points and scores his 500th goal. After acquiring Jacques Plante from St. Louis, the Maple Leafs clinch the last playoff spot. Norm Ullman notches a team-high 85 points. Under coach Punch Imlach, the first-year Sabres win 24 games but finish 5th in the East. Gil Perreault leads in goals, 38, and points, 72. The Canucks, with ex-Kings coach Hal Laycoe at the controls, finish 6th in the East. Detroit finishes 7th in the East behind both expansion clubs. Chicago grabs the West title by 20 points as Tony Esposito leads the league in victories with 35. Bobby Hull paces the Hawks with 44 goals. Brother Dennis Hull nets 40. After a 21-15-14 start, Al Arbor is replaced as Blues coach by Scotty Bowen. St. Louis goes on to finish second in the West Division. Bobby Clarke emerges as a star as he notches 63 points and leads Philadelphia to a third-place finish. Minnesota boasts a pair of 34-goal scorers, Danny Grant and Bill Goldsworthy, and claims the final playoff spot. The Kings have 5 20-goal scorers but fail to make the playoffs as they finish 6th in the West. Andy Bathgate comes out of retirement but scores just 15 goals for the Penguins, who drop to 6th place in the West. The last-place Seals, now known as the California Seals, give up the NHL's most goals, 320. 3 Bruins are among the top 4 goal scorers. Phil Esposito with 76, Johnny Busick with 51, and Ken Hodge with 43. Bobby Hull finishes third with 44. The top 5 assist men are Bruins' Bobby Orr with 102, Phil Esposito with 76, Johnny Busick with 65, Ken Hodge with 62, and Wayne Cashman with 58. Chicago's Keith Magnuson leads in penalty minutes, a record 291. Jacques Plante leads the league in goals against, average 1.88, while Eddie Giacomin tops the NHL with 8 shutouts. In the playoffs, the Brewers suffer a 7-game upset at the hands of the Habs. Rookie goalie Ken Dryden sparks the upset. In the other East opener, the Rangers beat the Leafs in 6 games. In the West, Chicago sweeps the Flyers and Minnesota upsets the Blues in 6. In a new playoff format, the Habs face Minnesota in the semifinals instead of their division rival Rangers and oust the Stars in 6. The Rangers and Chicago battle tooth and nail in the semifinals. The Hawks take Game 5 in overtime before New York evens it with a triple overtime win in Game 6 thanks to a Pete Stemkowski goal. The Habs take Game 7 4-2. Game 1 of the finals is tied 1-1 through one period of overtime. Chicago's Jim Pappin converts Stan Mikita's pass to win the game 2-1. Lou Agnati's pair of third-period goals in Game 2 give the Hawks their 5-3 margin of victory. Back in Montreal for Game 3, the Habs overcome 2-0 deficit with 4 unanswered goals, 3 from Mahovlich brothers plus Jan Conyers winner for a 4-2 victory. Dennis Hull's first-period goal in Game 5 proves the winner as Tony Esposito blanks the Habs 2-0. Down 3-2 entering the third period of Game 6, the Habs rally as Frank Mahovlich ties the game at 5-10, and Pete Mahovlich wins it on a pass from Frank less than 4 minutes later. In Game 7, Montreal overcomes a 2-goal deficit on a goal by Jacques Lemaire and 2 by Henry Richard to win 3-2. The Canadiens thus grab their 5th Stanley Cup in 7 years. Habs goalie Ken Dryden wins the Conn Smythe Trophy. Phil Esposito wins the first Lester B. Pearson Award. It's given to the NHL's outstanding player as selected by the players themselves. Bobby Orr wins both the Hart Trophy and Norris Trophy. Johnny Busick wins the Lady Byng Trophy, while Buffalo's Gail Perreault takes the Calder Trophy. Rangers' Eddie Giacomin and Gilles Villemere share the Vezina Trophy, while teammate Jean Rattel claims the Masterton. Quebec wins the Memorial Cup as its star Guy Lafleur leads the Quebec Junior League in scoring. Boston University claims the NCAA championship, defeating Minnesota 4-2 in the finals. BU goalie Dan Brady wins the tournament's MVP award. The Soviet Union wins its record 9th straight world championship. Determined to regain the Stanley Cup, the Bruins regrouped in 1971-72 behind Bobby Orr and Phil Esposito, who again rampaged through enemy defenses. For the second straight year, Esposito and Orr finished 1-2 in the league in scoring. Once again, Boston sped to the top of the heap, 54-13-11, and only overtures from a proposed new major league, dubbed the World Hockey Association, distracted observers from the bewildering Bostonians. Although the WHA had not actually organized a schedule, it laid out a heavily franchised circuit for the 72-73 season and warned the NHL that it would freely raid its rosters. Of course, the well-stocked Bruins would be a WHA target, and already there was talk of fabulous offers being made to Esposito and Ted Green. Interestingly, Orr's name was omitted from such talk, as it was just assumed that Bobby would never leave Boston. The loss of Orr would have sparked a revolt in Beantown worse than the Boston Tea Party. Bobby had become the best player in the world, said Hall of Fame referee Bill Chadwick. As powerful as Orr's Bruins had become, they nevertheless had a worthy challenger in New York. In addition to the goal-a-game line, Rod Gilbert, Vic Hadfield, and Jean Rattel, the Rangers had a competitive goalie in Ed Giacomin and a clever defense. But most of all, the Blue Shirts had Brad Park, the league's second-best defenseman. Though less flamboyant than Orr, Park was more competent in other ways. Brad was a better body checker, more accomplished stick handler and close to his body, and more creative in some ways on the attack. Park's only problems were that he lacked Orr's starry supporting cast and that he played for a less physical team. one that could be intimidated. We got pushed around too much, confirmed Gilbert. Despite these shortcomings, the Rangers finished at 48-17-13 and were given a shot at making the finals. And that they did. They ousted Montreal in the quarterfinals 4-2, then swept Chicago in 4 semifinal games. Boston easily reached the Stanley Cup Finals by beating Toronto in 5 games and the Blues in 4. In many ways, the Boston-New York final was a battle between stars Orr and Park. Orr sparked the Bruins to a 6-5 and 2-1 wins, and then Park took over and orchestrated a 5-2 Rangers victory in Game 3. Orr scored twice in Game 4, leading his club to a 3-2 victory. Park then turned Game 5, also a 3-2 result, in the Rangers' favor. Orr wrapped up the series in Game 6. He scored the opening goal and assisted on the second as Boston blanked the Rangers 3-0 for its second Stanley Cup in 3 years. When the postseason awards were announced, Park learned that he had finished runner-up for the Norris Trophy for the 3rd straight year. Meanwhile, Orr proudly accepted his 5th straight Norris Trophy, 3rd straight Hart Trophy, and 2nd career Conn Smythe Award. As good as Park was, he was no Bobby Orr. In measures to reduce full-scale brawls, the NHL installs a rule to eject any player who joins a fight in progress. The Hall of Fame inducts 5 new members: Busher Jackson, Gordon Roberts, Terry Sawchuk, Cooney Weiland, and Arthur Wirtz. In the amateur draft, the Canadiens take QMJHL scoring champ Guy Lafleur with the 1st overall pick, while Detroit grabs OHA ace Marcel Dion 2nd. The Bruins go 54-13-11 and again lead the league in goals with 330. Goalie Jerry Cheevers posts an undefeated streak of 32 games, 24-0-8, an all-time NHL record. Boston's Phil Esposito again leads the league in both goals with 66 and scoring total 113 points, while Bruin Bobby Orr tops the NHL in assists with 80 and second in scoring 117. The Rangers finished 2nd in the East as Eddie Jacquemin and Gilles Villemere win 24 games each. New York's goal a game line boasts the 3rd, 4th, and 5th top scorers in the NHL. Jean Rattel tallies 109 points, Vic Hadfield 106, including 50 goals, and Rod Gilbert 97. The Canadiens bid adieu to retired superstar Jean Beliveau, but they say hello to new coach Scotty Bowman, who leads them to a 3rd-place finish. Frank Mahovlich leads the team with 96 points. Montreal Canadiens rookie goalie Ken Dryden wins a league-best 39 games. Toronto gets 38 goals from Paul Henderson and finishes 4th in the East Division. The Leafs' Norm Ullman tallies his 1,000th point on October 16, 1971. Detroit, without Gordie Howe, who had retired after 25 years, wastes 42 goals from Mickey Redmond. The Wings finish 5th. The Sabres break in Richard Martin, who scores 44 goals, playing alongside Gil Perreault. However, the team wins just 16 games. Vancouver wins 20 games, 4 more than Buffalo, but notches just 48 points and brings up the rear of the East Division. Chicago goes 46-17-15 and dominates the still soft West Division. The Blackhawks yield just 166 goals, fewest in the league. Bobby Hull, in his last year with the Blackhawks, scores 50 goals. On December 12, 1971, he notches his 1,000th career point. The Minnesota North Stars, led by Bill Goldsworthy, 31-31-62, rise to 2nd place in the West. The Blues employ 3 coaches, Sid Abel, Bill McCreary, and Al Arbor, as they hold on to 3rd place behind Gary Unger's 36 goals. Pittsburgh, bolstered by the 30-goal performances of Pronovost and Polis, ties Philadelphia at 26, 38-14. The Penguins make the playoffs because they had a 3-2 win-loss record against the Flyers during the season. Despite new coach Fred the Fog Shiro and rising superstar Bobby Clarke, 35 goals, 81 points overall, the Flyers can't quite make the playoffs. The 2 California teams, the Seals and Kings, finished 6th and 7th in the West, respectively. The NHL's top goal scorers are Phil Esposito with 66, Bobby Hull with 50, and Vic Hadfield with 50. The top 5 assist makers are Bobby Orr with 80, Phil Esposito with 67, Jean Rattel with 63, Vic Hadfield with 56, and Boston's Fred Stanfield with 56. With a mark of 1.77, Chicago's Tony Esposito beats the league's best goals against average in 21 years. He also tops the league with 9 shutouts. Montreal's Ken Dryden, 2nd in goals against average, 2.24, also shutouts with 8. In the East Finals, Boston beats Toronto 4-1. The Rangers oust the Habs 4-2. Over in the West, Chicago dispatches Pittsburgh 4-0, and St. Louis ekes past Minnesota 4-3, winning the 7th game 2-1 on Kevin O'Shea's sudden death goal. In the Stanley Cup semifinals, the Rangers sweep Chicago in 4. The Bruins have no trouble with St. Louis in the semis. They sweep the series in 4 games, outscore the hapless Blues 28-8. The finals pit New York and Boston. The Bruins win 6-5 in Game 1 as Ken Hodge scores a hat-trick. Game 2 of the finals is a goalie duel between New York's Gilles Villemure and Boston's Ed Johnston. The Bruins win 2-1. In Game 3 in New York, Brad Park and Rod Gilbert each score twice to lift the Blue Shirts to a 5-2 win. In Game 4, Bobby Orr scores twice and assists on Don Marcotte's game-winning goal as the Bruins steal a 3-2 decision at Madison Square Garden. Facing elimination in Game 5 at Boston, the Rangers overcome a 2-1 deficit on Bobby Rousseau's pair of third-period goals, sending the series back to New York. In Game 6, Bobby Orr scores in the first period, and Jerry Cheever slams the door on New York with a 3-0 shutout, giving the Bruins their second Stanley Cup in 3 years. Bobby Orr wins the Conn Smythe Trophy. He and Phil Esposito each tally 24 playoff points. Bobby Orr accepts his third straight Hart Trophy and fifth consecutive Norris Trophy. He's the first player ever to win 3 straight Harts. The Vezina Trophies award Chicago goalie Tony Esposito and his partner Gary Smith. Ken Dryden, the 1971 Conn Smythe Trophy winner, captures the Calder Trophy. He also finishes runner-up for the Hart Trophy. The Bill Masterton Trophy goes to the Flyers' Bobby Clarke, a diabetic who has established himself as the team's heart and soul. The QMJHL's Cornwall Royals, with future pro star Richard Brodeur in goal, capture the Memorial Cup. Boston University successfully defends its NCAA title, beating Cornell 4-0 in the finals. Boston goalie Tom Regan is tournament MVP. The Soviet Union wins the Olympic gold medal at Sapporo, Japan, beating Czechoslovakia 5-2 in the decisive game. Team USA, with future NHLers Mark Howe and Robbie Ftorek, wins the Olympic silver by virtue of its 5-1 win over the Czechs. The Canadians do not participate in the Olympics as they protest the presence of professional amateurs from Eastern Bloc countries. The summer of 1972 left traditional hockey fans and professionals with a collective state of lockjaw because of 2 exceptionally traumatic events. The first was the emergence of a baby major league, the World Hockey Association. The second was the truly fabulous 8-game series between the Soviet national team and the NHL-sponsored Team Canada. Days after the 1972 Stanley Cup Series, agents from the WHA began combing NHL rosters in their efforts to sign players for the new 12-team league. By far the most decisive development occurred in June when Blackhawks great Bobby Hull signed a 10-year, $2.75 million contract to play for and coach the Winnipeg Jets. Hull's move made front pages across the continent and promptly forced the hitherto smug NHL owners to sit up and take notice. Hull's switch inspired other NHL stars to consider a change. A month later, Montreal defenseman J.C. Tremblay signed with Quebec Nordiques, while Bruins goalie Jerry Cheevers left Beantown for the Cleveland Crusaders. By now, panic gripped the NHL front offices. Fearful of being raided, the New York Rangers signed their better players to outlandishly high salaries. The more frugal Bruins lost Johnny McKenzie and Derek Sanderson to the Philadelphia Blazers and Teddy Green to the New England Whalers. The New York Islanders, who had yet to play a single NHL game, also lost several players, 2 to the aptly named New York Raiders. Meanwhile, Team Canada prepared for the 8-game series, 4 in Canada and 4 in Russia, that supposedly would be a breeze for NHL aces. If we don't win the series in 8 straight, said Montreal goalie Ken Dryden, it will be a dark day for Canada, judging by the way people are talking. There was little sunshine early on. On September 2nd, 1972, in the series' first game, the Soviets triumphed 7-3 at the Montreal Forum. This, said one NHL official, is the catastrophe of the century. The NHL skaters rebounded in the second game for a 4-1 win, but the third game ended in a 4-4 tie. In the final game of the Canadian Tour, the Soviets humiliated Team Canada 5-3 as the Vancouver fans booed the NHLers off the ice. When the series resumed in Moscow, Team Canada rolled to a 3-0 lead in the first game, but to the astonishment, the Soviets rallied 5-4 victory. The Russians, said Dryden, are not 20 guys dependent on a star to bail them out. They have an organized plan of attack, and that pays off. Now it was Team Canada's time to rally. Trailing 3-1-1, the NHL skaters suddenly came alive and took the next 3 games and the series. Maple Leafs forward Paul Henderson emerged as the hero, scoring the winning goal in the last minutes of the 7th and 8th games. His game winner with 34 seconds left in Game 8 filled Canadians with national pride. However, it couldn't erase the uneasy feeling that Canada was no longer the world's dominant hockey power.
I'm Charlie Saunier from the Renegades of Puck, and this has been the 20th Century Hockey Chronicle. If you'd like to support more projects like this, please follow the Renegades of Puck on all social media platforms and also visit renegadesofpuck.com.